Hi guys, this is my first English version of Paula's Positive podcast. I'm sorry about my English. Being honest, haven't practiced a lot, but I'm here today to bring up one really positive guy named Peter Paxx. Actually, I found Peter from TikTok. It's so weird how people talking about negativity of TikTok, but actually you could meet a really nice people there, making some special connection. Peter from Instagram, and it was worth it. He is so amazing, so today you will hear about everything. Welcome Peter, it's a real deal today. It's like a studio already. We must thank my friend Rein and Leib for video part here, but back to you, it's so nice to see you again. Who haven't seen on Instagram or TikTok, we met once already, and it's so positive that you could meet someone strange, but he will give you such an amount of positive energy. It's so amazing that you're here in Estonia. Tell the listeners who you are, where do you come from, and what brought you here.
Hey Rein and Paula, thanks so much for having me. So I guess I've never been introduced as someone who is strange, but I'm sure that comes with positivity. I'm so excited to be here in Estonia, and I just got back from Amsterdam. We were talking about doing this podcast for a while, and of course after Amsterdam I had to go through quarantine just to make sure everything is good, and here I am, so thanks for having me.
But where do you come from?
So I get that question a lot in Estonia. So I'm Australian, I was born in Perth, Australia. My parents are from Vietnam, and I currently live here in Tartu, Estonia.
What do you like about Tartu? It's a kind of village for you if you're like from Perth. What are you doing here?
It's an interesting question. So I guess for myself, I always look at where I am in life, and for me personally, I love to travel and I've seen a lot of big cities, but at this point in life I felt that I needed something quieter, and Tartu fits that perfectly. I love Tallinn. Tallinn's a great city, but for some reason Tartu just is that sweet spot.
It's not too small.
Not too small and not too large, and I find that there are a lot more people who speak English, and maybe it's because it's a university town. Compared to Tallinn.
Yeah, of course. But yes, you came from Amsterdam with your girlfriend. Tell us about that, your emotions, how about traveling at the moment? Did you have to stay home or do the test or something?
Yeah, definitely. So I guess it's a weird place that we're in right now, with the pandemic, and the news is not always positive. And for me, I'm always trying to be an optimist, and I'm always looking at the opportunities and what we can do to grow, right? So I guess if I start on the travel side, I'm always on the Estonian news website each day to read the updates. In fact, this morning I read that the Estonian government has just approved more airports to open and more direct flights between Tallinn and other countries. At the same time, I understand that they've got to ensure that we don't go through a second wave of the virus as well. On top of that though, as soon as I got back from Amsterdam, what surprised me was that you guys have a great testing process. So as soon as I arrived at the airport, it was about a 15-minute wait, got my COVID test and got the results within 24 hours. Thank God it was negative. And then it was followed up with a second test within 7 days. So you get 2 tests in Estonia in a 7-day period, and you find out your results in 24 hours. So I know that, I've read up in other countries they might take up to 2-3 weeks just to find out, and I find that quite ridiculous because you can't do a test. There's no point having a test and then waiting so long to find out where you're at. And the second part to the testing was that for myself, it was free because I have an Estonian ID. So Estonia, thank you for giving me the Estonian ID. And if you don't know, I'm actually an Estonian resident. And so through that, of course, the COVID testing was provided.
Yeah, really nice. What do you make for a living? What are your hobbies? Or your hobby is your living?
I hate that question. So I guess I've always seen myself as someone who tries to turn their passions and hobbies into a business. I'm a firm believer that in this modern age, anything that you're into as an interest, a hobby, a passion, what you love doing as a kid or as an adult can be turned into a business and create some form of revenue. But on top of that, what sits above all that is, I guess, happiness, right? So if you're pursuing what you love, regardless of how much money you actually make from it, I believe that you're a happier person anyway. So it's always worth the risk. And so for myself, several years ago, I was working at Apple, and it was my dream job to work for my favorite company in the world, right? So I did that, and I loved it. I loved all the experiences and all the lessons that I learned from Apple, but I reached a point where I realized that I needed to do something more for myself. And I know it sounds selfish, but I really believe that you have to just sit down and reflect and go, what am I really interested in? And for me, it was business, it was magic, it was performing, it was traveling. So I had to sit down and find a way to make all those things work. And thankfully, I'm here in Estonia because I was able to travel and make connections and create businesses.
I'm thinking a lot that when people are quite negative at work, then I'm thinking, why are you here at this point? You can leave, you can do something different, and you have that courage.
That's it, and it was definitely scary. So to say that I was leaving my 9-to-5 job to take a risk.
Yeah, but it's not like in some kiosk, like selling bread. It was like most of the people dream job, yes.
Yeah, I guess. I hate comparing different job roles, but I guess some jobs are easier to leave, right? If you hate your job, then that's an easy decision. You can wake up and go, screw this, I hate my job, I'm going to quit and I'm going to pursue what I love. I was grateful that I was given the opportunity to work at a company that I love. And so the decision was harder, but then it also proved that several years after I left, it made me realize that it was definitely worth it. So in a way, the fact that I loved it so much and I was willing to take that risk and then showed myself that I became happier through taking risk, just shows that it's all about taking that path and pursuing what you love, regardless of how much you love or hate your job.
You have to get that point when it's not the work isn't feeding your soul anymore. Then you have to change it. Otherwise, it will turn into a job you don't like.
That's it. And I saw a quote recently, I can't remember who said it, but even if you don't like what you do, there's always a way to learn from it or find a way to love it. So if you're a cleaner, I'm not saying cleaning is a bad job, but if you hate cleaning, there's always a way to twist it around and find meaning and purpose in the cleaning. So for example, let's say you're from overseas, like my parents are immigrants. Let's say you made it to Australia and you're willing to take up any job, and the job offered is a cleaning position. Even though you hate cleaning, you have to then see the benefit and the fact that you have to be grateful for that job, and the fact that you're in Australia as an immigrant, being able to be paid a decent wage, doing a job that most people may not like, but for yourself, even if you don't like it, if you're grateful, you're happier. And so it doesn't matter what job you're in anyway.
Yes. Okay, let's go to the easy part, or fun part. Tell us about magic.
Magic. Wow, so magic is something I've always loved ever since I was 6 years old. So my dad, who's not a magician by the way, taught me my very first card trick. Your typical pick a card, any card, and I'll find it, right? And
where did he learn this?
It
wasn't quite time. You're like on TikTok. Okay, let's pause it. Okay, son, you can see this one.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's not like anyone can use. Back then, you couldn't just bring up YouTube, right, and Google how to learn magic or how to do a magic trick. And I haven't asked him that question, but my understanding is that he must have learned it from his older brother. So his older brother, who's my uncle, who recently passed away, also showed me a trick. So they each had one or two tricks each, and I'm pretty sure they just taught each other. And they come from a very small village in Vietnam. So whoever passed it down to them is probably another villager who learned that from someone else, because it definitely wasn't through the internet. and it wasn't through books or anything like that. But it was that very first trick that got me into magic at a young age. So I stuck with it, and then it was only in my teens and early adulthood that I realised that what I was into was quite different and quite unique. Because for me at the time, it just felt normal. It was something I enjoyed doing, and in my spare time, it was what I did. I read up books on magic. I would go to the libraries. In fact, I had 3 or 4 different library cards, so I would go from one library to the next, because at one point I realised I was going through all the magic books that were available. I mean, there weren't that many to begin with anyway. Mm-hmm. You don't find that many magic books in each library, but as I was going through each one, I realised that, hang on, this is not normal, it's not common, because all my friends were playing sports and things like that, and here I am just at home playing with a pack of cards. But I soon realised that I was able to, I guess, turn it into something that paid me. And I did that when I was an adult, so, as a youngster, it was always a hobby. As an adult, I realised, hey, this is something quite different and unique, and I can monetize it.
If you're from Vietnam, there was no kind of internet or like we have now, we can search everything. Maybe it was like meant to be, some kind of traveler passed through the village and you had to like learn this, and now you are here, you are performing. Also,
yeah, I mean, that sounds great. I hope I end up finding it, in fact, now that you say that, as soon as we finish this, I will go call my dad and ask him, where did he learn that card trick from?
But it's interesting, yes.
That's it. If it was some random traveller or some dude in a village who was passing through and taught my dad a trick, and then he came all the way to Australia and then taught me that trick, that's full circle. And here I am now performing magic, and it could be from some random occurrence that my dad had.
Now, at the moment, it's like so easy to get some kind of information, or like, oh, I'm buying this today, I will learn it from YouTube or somewhere. But at this time, it's so interesting to think about where, how, like, it's so awesome.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely can Google anything, right? Almost anything these days, right? If you want to be a chef, you can just go on YouTube and go and Google, fix a car, find car parts, whatever, right? And I have a mentor in magic, and he's always reminded me that regardless of how fast we grow now with technology, there are some elements that will always be missing. And so if I look at, say, YouTube, right? You can go on YouTube, you can learn to be a chef in 5 minutes. You can learn your first card trick in 5 minutes. But if you skip the process of picking up a book and reading it, you're not able to train your mind to think like a magician or to think like a chef. Because if you go on YouTube, you have to think about the creator on YouTube. They're trying to create a video that's engaging from the very first few seconds to the end, and get you to subscribe and like and click on notifications and whatnot. But what they miss out is they're not able to teach you how to think, to create effects and new acts and methods on your own. Whereas a book isn't visual, you have to read it, and it's your mind that creates the story, and it's your mind that has to come up with how you're going to present that effect. And so you learn that from books, and that's something that's missing right now by just copying a video.
Also, if it comes too easy, then you're missing the passion, the love about the thing you're doing. So it's also important ingredient, even if you're cooking. If you're cooking with mind and heart, then it will be delicious.
That's it. And to just keep on failing, right? Like, I always tell anyone who asks for advice regarding magic or business, I always say, be willing to fail. And if you have that mindset before you even start, then you actually start, right? Because one of the biggest fears of many people is that if we start something, what if it fails? What if my friends, tease me? What if my parents go, I told you, you shouldn't have taken that path, you failed. But if you're willing to accept the fact that there will be failures and that you'll learn from it, then at least there's now motivation, and you remove the fear of starting in the first place. And I said that to myself before I did my very first magic show. I said, I don't care how this is going to turn out. I know I'm going to make a lot of mistakes, but I have to start, because if I just overthink it, I'll never start. And if I don't start, then you're never going to progress. So it's just one of those things, and that's always helped me to just go, yeah, be willing to fail. You know, day one, be willing to fail on that very first day, and at least you're starting. And then by day 475, at least you're so much better than that guy who started. But you're way ahead of anyone who has always thought about ideas but never executed.
Yeah, it's the same story about this podcast, why it's even on at the moment when the COVID started and the quarantine was on. So I was bored at home and I thought, yes, what the hell. I wanted to do this podcast a long time ago, but I didn't have time, or like time is the most thing. So now I have the time, I have the courage. So I also knew that I will make a lot of mistakes. I had the mic and everything, but the sound was bad at the moment. My questions maybe wasn't so good. Now at the moment I have a queue, so it's really nice, and I am making mistakes, but I'm happy that I started. I know I will fail many times, I know, but it will get better and better. A few days ago, one lady at the shop told me, yes, stupid people will ask questions. I was like, no, stupid is the person who doesn't ask. Smart one asks. So everything.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
And you're spot on. I always look at, we're still in a pandemic, I guess, and I've always seen it as something that is an opportunity, right? So a lot of my friends, some of them had to leave their jobs or were laid off, and I just said that, well, now you have, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. You don't know how long you have off work, and if you've been complaining over the last few years that you don't have time to start a hobby, a passion, or learn a new recipe, now you have the time.
Do it now or stop whining.
That's it, right? I mean, it's such a great opportunity right now that we're all able to mentally reset, spend less hours in the office, have the ability to work at home and have more time. So if you're not starting what you love, then it's you. That's the problem, yes. Right?
You are the whiner, not the doer.
That's it. And I think for a lot of people, if you get caught in the whole 9 to 5 routine, pre-pandemic, I understand that there's very little time. So I feel that regardless of how busy you were beforehand, this now gives you that chance to go, cool, I have that extra half an hour, I have that extra hour to do some reading, to learn more about what I'm interested in. And the other part is to start something completely new, right? I'm sure a lot of people during the pandemic realized that, screw this, after the pandemic, I'm not going to be an accountant, I'm going to be a chef. Right, I'm sure the pandemic has created a lot of chefs, a lot of writers, a lot of actors. Like, who knows what comes out of this? But I think it's such a great opportunity for us to go, what do I really care about? And let's give it a shot. But and no one's there to judge you, right?
Yeah. No. But what was the best thing that happened to you while you were quarantined or while COVID?
Interesting. So I realized that I wasn't that affected by the pandemic. And what I mean by that is, before coming to Estonia, I knew that coming here was for a bit of peace and quiet, for time for me to self-reflect. And then the pandemic hit, and then we're all asked to, stay home, be safe, and socially distance ourselves. And it didn't affect me in the sense that I was chasing that anyway. And what it did was, I realized that I wanted peace and quiet. I now have it, but now it's on me to use that time productively. And I realized that it's so much harder than you think, right? You get given this time, you get told that, okay, you're now at home for the next 3 months. You have the time, but now it's you and your discipline that's going to wake up in the morning to start that book, to start that podcast, to learn that new magic trick, to start that new business. And it's so much harder. So yes, we have more time, but we just have to be honest and go, am I using that time?
Yeah, it's true, because I'm also if I started this podcast and before I was like, no, today I have to clean. No, today I have to cook. I have to clean again. I have to cook and everything. You're making up everything, but it's in your hands to do it. Like, no, today I'm not reading this. I'm reading this tomorrow.
That's it. And then I went through phases of looking up YouTube at home workouts, right? Like, okay, cool. The biggest, I think I saw some data and it just said that one of the biggest trends as soon as we went in lockdown was home workout, right? And so I went through a phase where I was just trying all these different home workouts, but then that also becomes routine. And so after a week or two, it felt normal, and then it was no longer something new and exciting. And so at first you go, okay, this is great. I have all the time in the world. I can learn a bit of yoga. I can learn more stretches that I can do. I can try to fix my hips. I can do all this. And then after 2 weeks, that then becomes normal, and you start to realize that, hang on, I'm not as committed as I was 2 weeks ago, because the idea of starting was exciting, but now I'm just falling back into my routine. So it goes back to discipline. So it's a tough one, right? You get given all the time in the world, but you have to be disciplined.
I'm thinking that it's because we have everything. We have everything in our phones or computers. You can like learn too much and everything. It's too easy. So you can like pick it up and throw it away. Like, it's too easy.
I mean, that's
if
the
it's
same.
harder, then you're like committing yourself more.
That's it. And the other part, and it's not a good or a bad thing, but I also don't see a problem in learning lots of new things, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's great to be specialized and good at one thing that you do, right? I mean, it's good to be an expert in your field, but at the same time, I love the fact that there's information on anything.
Yeah.
So you can upskill yourself across many different fields, not be an expert, so to speak, but at least know a lot more than, us 20, 30 years ago. Imagine there was a pandemic without the internet, right? Imagine being stuck at home and just playing Snake on your Nokia. So we're definitely lucky. I hate trying to be that optimist when we're going through a pandemic, but there is so much opportunity right now.
No, I'm quite optimistic because it was like this chill time and everybody were like much relaxed and like pushed to their homes, and you have time to cook and do everything and be with your loved ones and maybe read a book and clean your house or something.
That's it.
Yeah, it was so good.
And the other great thing is we also learned that a lot of meetings that we used to have, we can now do via Zoom, or we can now turn it into a 10-minute email. And so you save time, because if you were in the routine of having to attend weekly meetings, or meetings daily, you now realize that, hang on, it can be just a 10-minute Zoom call, it can just be a 5-minute email, and you now have more time to do other things.
You don't have to rush everywhere.
That's it. Or be in a meeting that's an hour, just because it's scheduled for an hour, and not be as productive as you just having a Zoom call, making your points, and then moving on to the next.
Good point. But how do you collect your positive energy? You're like always like super energized. You're a real good speaker. You have that voice, your tone, your everything. You're smiling all the time. You have that passion. What is it?
Well, first of all, thanks for all the kind words. What is it? I guess I've always, as a kid, I was very shy. Okay, so the person you see now is the complete opposite of who I was as a child. So I remember, being 6, 7 years old in class, and I was the one that was at the back, too shy to put my hand up to ask questions, right? And then moving into high school, it was so bad that in class I would freeze up. So the teacher's speaking in class, I would freeze up, and the thoughts that I had in my mind were all around whether people were looking at me, are they judging me, maybe I shouldn't move, maybe I should just sit in my seat and at my table and just not move at all, because if I don't move then I don't draw attention to me. and I was just super nervous all the time. And one day I just woke up and realized that it's not the life I wanted. And it was around the same time where I started performing magic, because I realized that by performing magic I could present something that I've practiced, right? So if I've spent hours and hours on a pack of cards learning a card trick, in public I can now present that, and I was confident in performing that effect because I'd had practiced it, right? Whereas beforehand, the shyness and the nervousness came from a lack of confidence. And so it was almost a turning point where I realized that, okay, if I just practice something, if I just put time into something, I'll then be confident enough to share that. And if I'm confident in sharing something, then I'm less shy in public. And I've just carried that approach throughout my businesses and my life. And even at the point where I am now with my magic shows, I have an acting teacher, I have a vocal coach, and their role is to make me a better speaker, a better performer. And so I know that if I get that practice, if I get that training, I'll just become a more confident person. So it does require investment, but I think more importantly it was just that mindset switch where I woke up and just said I've had enough of being shy.
Yeah, but it's so awesome because you are like using that kind of tools what we have nowadays. You are using coaches. So Estonians are not like investing like that kind of stuff. If they know how to do it or not, there is only two options. You are. I see where it comes from if you're speaking to me, and it's a perfect investment.
You say that, but then I get to Estonia and I realise that every Estonian knows how to build a house and fix things, right? And so I don't know if it's because it was their parents, or their grandfather or whoever who taught them, and it's just a cultural ability to fix and build things. But for myself, that's an area of my life where I've got no skill sets in. So you might say that I speak well or present well was because I got the training for it. And so if I come here and I need to build a house, I would have to get someone to train me in building a home. And I know that at this point in my life, someone who has built houses and fixed houses in their family for the last 20, 30 years of their life, I'll never be able to compare to that person. So it's just easier to have that person build the home for me, right? So I think, you have to go back to what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. And because I knew I was shy, I was like, cool, who do I work with to help me become less shy? Okay, I'm not great at acting. Okay, maybe I just need to confront that and find an acting teacher who will help me become a better actor. And acting for me was never to present a character that wasn't me. Acting for me was just to build the confidence to be myself on stage and project who I am as a person.
But first, thank you for nice warm compliments for Estonians. How about your free time when you are not working? How do you spend time with your girlfriend? Because we have to mention her, otherwise you will have many direct messages. I'm seeing from TikTok you are like spending time together, you are like going into nature or something.
Yeah, so you've seen through my social media that I love to travel. And so I've always set the goal of trying to find reasons to travel. So at first when I was traveling, I was a backpacker, and it was all about how many places I can see, how many islands can I visit in Southeast Asia, what can I do to be a traveller, to be a backpacker.
I interrupt. Are you a city traveller or nature traveller?
A bit of both. I had this debate recently and I was actually confused with what I actually like. So I love big cities. I grew up in a city, so it's just something that I'm comfortable in. And I love nature in the sense that it's a break from the city. But for me, as soon as I get to a small village or on an island, I appreciate it for the first 3-5 days, a week or two, and then I start missing the city again. And so I think it's just finding a balance. I don't think there's such thing as cities are better than is better than nature, and nature is always better than a big city. I think you need both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand. When you're full of city, you will go and rest your soul in some kind of mountains or something. Yes. What do you love to do more?
More of? To read more, and to find more meaning in my travels. So back to what I was saying before about wanting to visit many countries and cities. I realized that as the more you do that, the more places you see, you start to realize that you need to add purpose and meaning in the travel destination itself. And what I mean by that is you don't want to just go to a city or a country and look on TripAdvisor and go, what are the top 10 things to do? What are the sights and attractions of that city? So for myself, if I do a Google search, I might Google what are the top magic shows around the world? What are some of the business expos and seminars that are happening around the world? And then use that as the reason to travel. And so I'm still traveling, but at least now there's something a bit more deep and meaningful behind that reason to fly.
Tell us about more those magic shows, what you're like up to yourself, or you are.
Yeah, so regarding magic shows, I always knew when I wanted to take magic seriously that theatres and stages and halls and all that have always excited me, right? And I didn't want to be a magician who relied on weekly weddings and birthdays and things like that. Not that that's bad, but for me I was always fascinated with the stage. And so I knew that for me to go from bedroom magician to the stage, I needed to treat it as a business. And I think that's the part that a lot of people forget or don't realize, is that you can be a great magician online, on TikTok, on social media, have millions of views, but if you don't treat performing as a business, then you're not giving yourself a chance to turn it into something that can generate ticket sales and revenue. And so when I go back to me creating a magic show as a business, that was me literally connecting to investors, contacting my hometown Perth, finding out about what they're looking for in terms of art and culture. And I know that my hometown Perth, Australia, they have a lot of investment in the arts. It's something that's very important, and it's all about celebrating diversity and culture. So when I saw that, and when I connected with them, and then I found investors who were interested in creating a magic show, I had to create something that benefited all parties. So on one hand, yes, I definitely wanted to get on stage and perform, but I had to also ensure that the show that I created celebrated diversity, was about inclusion. What's the message behind the magic show? Who are the investors who are going to pay for the magic show so that it exists? And what are they getting out of it? And so you realize that you just become a person who is connecting all the dots to turn this idea into reality. Because I can't just sit at home and practice card tricks all day. That's not going to get me into a stage show. I realized that really early, that I had to just go out and make the connections to make it happen.
Otherwise it's like kind of boring to me if I'm not making something to someone or like without point. When I'm like cooking or doing something without point or some kind of painting, then it's like I don't give all my effort.
That's
Understand?
it, you're right.
Yeah, like, okay, yes, next time I will do it better, this card trick, when I'm doing on a show or on a stage. Yeah.
And even say cooking, right?
Yeah.
I'm not a great cook, I'll admit that. But if I've got guests coming over, I do go on YouTube. I do want to learn a few tips and tricks to make me a better cook. so that I can be a great host. And so there's reason behind learning how to cook. It's not for myself. And so that's the same with, say, magic. As cool as some tricks are, and I love coming up with new ideas, I always have to, I find it more meaningful when I go, what is the audience going to take away from this act or this show? And I go back to some of the feedback or the people that I meet after the show. And the most memorable moments with the audience are from people who talk about the messages in the show that resonated with them, not the tricks. So I'm past the point where people go up and say, hey, great tricks, how did you do that? That's something that excites you when you first start out. But I'm at a point now where I appreciate people coming up going, hey, that story that you told me about your parents and their struggles and their journey across the seas to make it to Australia as immigrants, that resonated with me. And I prefer those conversations more than the tricks themselves.
Yeah, trick videos you can look up from YouTube also.
That's sad, right? Yeah, I mean, we're
These
living
are
in
like
a world.
real connections.
That's it. We're in a world now where you go on TikTok and it's about creating a 5 to 15 second video that is highly engaging. And so what happens in that is that the tricks or the video edits and all that get your attention. That's their goal, to get your attention. But a lot of times you find that there's now a lack of meaning and purpose behind that trick.
I understand. But you are like so super good at this. How? You have like so many followers on TikTok and likes, almost million. I'm still quite surprised, and I guess because I look at the data and analytics behind my account, right, and I realise that a quarter of my viewers are Estonians, and so I have to just think, here's a guy who's obviously a foreigner in this country. I'll post a selfie video of myself doing a trick or walking through Tartu or going to just saying, hi Peter, nice to see you.
Like, hey guys, it's Peter.
So easy.
Here I am in Haapsalu, or here I am in Pärnu. And when I say that, I get all these Estonians who love the fact that I'm in Estonia. And on top of that, I have all these Estonians who tell me that I'm not pronouncing the cities correctly, right? So I find Estonian a really hard language. But aside from all the messages of Estonians telling me I'm not speaking correctly, I get a ton of support from Estonian viewers. And I'm grateful for that. Like, I had no idea that, first of all, I didn't even realise that TikTok was location-based, right? I thought that by setting up a profile as an Australian, that naturally I thought that my videos would go out to Australian viewers. But instead, I'm guessing it's the fact that because I'm physically located in Estonia, that my videos pop up for Estonian viewers. And so most of my viewers are Estonian.
You are not from here, and it's interesting to see, are you speaking in Estonian, or what you are doing here, how the hell do you like here, what are you doing here? Because we are like thinking, oh, it's such a village, we want to leave or go somewhere else. So people are like amazed.
Yeah, and I guess to answer your question around how I'm able to do well on TikTok in Estonia, it comes back to me celebrating and appreciating the fact that I'm able to see all these towns and villages and places in Estonia. And if you go through the comments of my videos, a lot of the comments you'll see are people, Estonians, going, oh, finally someone who's, positive about Estonia. And I get that a lot, so it just makes me think that, okay, well, what about all the other videos in Estonia? Are people talking negative about the country? And I always remind them, so whenever someone comments, oh, thanks so much for, your positive comments about our country, etc., I always tell them that if you are grateful enough to travel and see different places, you realise that the world is amazing. And if I travel, if I leave Perth to another country, I want to explore that country and learn about that country, right? To a point where I realize that I now know more about different countries than my hometown. And so I encourage everyone to treat their own city or their own country as a tourist, because we forget that. If I go back to Perth, I now often, when I land at the airport, I'll pick up a brochure about Australia just to go through it and pretend that I'm a tourist for the first time visiting the country, and I just look at places to see, because 9 times out of 10 they're places that tourists would see, but I wouldn't myself because I live there. Mm-hmm. Or Estonians who were born in Estonia might not consider all these great places that tourists would. And so the tourists end up seeing more of the country than the people living in it.
Right, that's a good point, because sometimes I'm like exploring in Instagram for pictures, then I'm saying, ooh, nice landing, ooh, nice view, oh, this is Estonia, okay.
That's it, right?
Yeah, you will see it through some other people's eyes different. Like if you're on the street and looking this, okay.
And the other part is people don't realise that you get used to where you live. It doesn't matter where you live in the world, it becomes routine. And so anything different is always exciting. And so of course it's natural that if you live in Estonia, that Australia or Thailand or Vietnam or Paris is exciting because it's different. But I'm just here to remind everyone that I'm showing Estonians how great your country is, and you live down the road, so you could also go to these locations that I'm filming in. And so it's just that reminder to just be grateful for where you're at and the beauty that is around you, because you forget that. And I do it all the time, and that's why I always try to remind myself and others to just treat your own place as a tourist.
Yeah, maybe you're so popular in Estonia that people will see your point, that this place is beautiful and come on, see it. But you've been traveling a lot. How many destinations? Do you know?
I've lost track, and I say that because back to my backpacker days, and that's how a lot of people start traveling, right? You buy a backpack, you look at the cheapest destinations to fly to, the places that have the cheapest food and accommodation, and you do that, and the goal is to see and immerse yourself in as many places as possible. Sorry, ask the question again.
How many destinations do you know? Because I'm happy for you that you lost your track.
Yeah. So I stopped counting the number of places I've been to and the number of kilometers I've traveled, because I realized that when I first started traveling, it was about how many places I could visit, how many countries can I tick off. But if you set that as a goal, I mean, first off, it's great to have that goal because it encourages you to start traveling in the first place. But then I realized that I started missing a lot of places that I've been to. And so if your goal is purely to visit 20 countries, 50 countries, 100 countries, what happens when you're at, your 67th country, but there are 15 countries that you really miss, that you want to go back to? Because it's almost like if you go back to them, they don't count because you're not able to now say I've been to 68 countries, 69 countries. And so I reached a point where I had to just stop counting and just revisit places that I love. And so then it doesn't matter how many countries or cities you've been to, because if you love a place that much and you go back 7 times, then do that.
Or you want to stay there, like.
That's it. If you love a place so much,
you want to stay there.
Yeah, you're spot on. And that's happened a lot of times for me, where I think over a 3-4 week period that I'm going to see this many cities, this many islands, etc. And then I fall in love with the place and end up staying there for a longer period. And that should be something that you celebrate. So I always tell people, don't worry about how many places you've seen, because if you love a place enough, stay. And if you love a place enough to go back to, then do it. It's not about how many more places you can visit in your lifetime.
But where is your dream destination?
That's a hard one because it always changes,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
you will go there and then you're, oh, okay, I want to visit this. country also.
That's it. And the other part is I realised that for my personality type, I like variety, right? So I always want to experience new things, new places, etc. And I also know from experience that what you imagine a place to be like is often quite different to how it really is, right? So, for example, say Santorini, right? It was a dream of mine to go to Santorini, and it's an amazing place. But then people forget that when you go there, you're trying to take a photo of the sunset with like 900 other tourists. And so the photos are always so much prettier, and they look more isolated than how it actually is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not saying that Santorini is not a place to go to. It's amazing, but it's often different to the postcard that you see in travel agencies.
We have a lot to speak about. I think we have to do another podcast episode also soon. But please give us a book, movie or podcast recommendation.
Okay, so since we're talking about traveling, the book that had the most impact on my travels is The Beach. And I feel so bad because I can't remember the author's name.
Don't worry, we can Google it up.
Yeah, all I know is, his surname is Garland. Can't remember his first name. So the book, The Beach, that book inspired the movie The Beach with Leonardo DiCaprio. And in the movie, they go to Thailand to film the movie, and it's all about travel, it's all about backpacking, and it's all about finding paradise. And so the book and the movie are two of the things that inspired my travels in the first place. So I have those two things to thank for because it just ignited this reason, this spark to travel and see the world. And you said podcasts, so my favourite podcaster right now would have to be Gary Vaynerchuk, because he talks a lot about positivity, he talks a lot about being grateful, and he talks about executing, right? So it goes back to whatever you're into, whatever your passion, interest, hobby is, don't overthink it. If you care about it, execute and start. And while you're executing and starting, be grateful for that journey that you're on. So I love his podcast. He has a lot of good lessons in it, but a lot of wisdom and practical advice at the same time. I find that a lot of business podcasts that I listen to motivates you, but doesn't actually give you any tools to work with. But you listen to a Gary V podcast and you get both.
Yeah, super nice recommendations. Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to speak up with you. It was so positive. I'm thinking we have to do a next episode also because there is a lot to speak about more. So where could people connect with you, where they can find you?
Yeah, so you can go to my website, peterpaxx.com, so Peter, Paxx.com, or just search me on Instagram or TikTok, and you can find me there.
Yeah, thank you.
And thanks again for having me. And again, I'm just blown away by the reception of Estonians. So Estonia, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. High five. Woo!